You were invited to present a report to the United Nations, specifically about the Colombian Civil War and recommendations of what might be done. Well, there's been a peace process going through at the moment, but you know, how can it be avoided perhaps in future? And one of the main recommendations that came out from your report was that you feel there should be a more plentiful and diverse media sector.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the media sector in Colombia like at the moment? What is it now, and what would you see it being?
I think the situation now in Colombia is really difficult for the media in general, because some, like the mainstream media in Colombia, have a strong tie with the Colombian government. So when they try to cover things about the conflict and things about the peace process and so on, always is a governmental position in the news. So I think it's a lack of diversity in the mass media, because the Colombian public just can have just one point of view about what's happening. So sometimes it's really difficult for the public to understand like the complexity about the conflict, because they just have one position about what happened. I'm going to give you an example. From 2002 on to 2010, the Colombian government started to develop a strategy called the Democracy Security Program. And they start to change narratives about the conflict and say like, okay, hold on, this is not an armed conflict, this is a terrorist threat. All the media start to reproduce this governmental agenda, if you want. So the people start to say, okay, maybe this is not an armed conflict, this is just a terrorist attack, so we're going to support the government in order to do some actions. The problem is like you can just have one side of the coin, and what happened, for example, with the victims, or what happened with the NGOs or human rights workers that are trying to improve the quality of democracy in Colombia. So just to put simple, it's like we need like a more plurality of narratives for the Colombian conflict. Whereas the victims in the news agenda, where narratives about the human rights workers, the different communities that create that is happening in Colombia.
How can you bring about more media that's you know has its own opinions? Because at the moment, obviously, it's very sort of state-led.
Yeah.
How would you get? Are they not allowed to? You know, would you be allowed to to create your own newspaper, for example?
The problem is the relationship between the companies, like the private companies, and the government, because at the end of the day, it's just like a huge business to produce news in Colombia. You have to train in some journalists, in order to produce this kind of new perspective about the conflict. You have to create more strong, if you want, companies in Colombia, but actually just giving some support to people that want to produce news. So it's just like a try to create a different ecosystem, if you want. Just try to create more people doing different perspectives, but actually I think training could be one of the key issues, like from different perspectives, like trying to do this thing, I guess.
And would there be opportunity for international news companies to be involved? By that I'm meaning perhaps Reuters, perhaps the BBC. I mean, do the populace of Colombia not get a chance to see these via the internet or whatever?
Well, the Colombian population can receive news from like companies like Reuters or the BBC, actually different international companies. The problem is like at the impact of this news in the Colombian population, if you want, because it's not a huge amount of population in Colombia that can receive this news. It's just like let's say like the 10% of the population, and actually it's really important this view from another country, because they can put some pressure in the Colombian government to produce a better job, if you mean like it's called like transnational political action, like how different media all around the world can help, for example, in this case, the peace process, and try to put some pressure in the Colombian government to produce another perspective. So I think it's a really important role for the news, for international companies that produce news, Reuters, in the future, to create a more democratic country from Colombia.
And part of the difficulty is that a large percentage of the Colombian population just don't have access to the internet, basically.
Yeah, well, it's for the last, I think, 5 years, it's a huge increase in using of internet. Sorry, the population are using more and more internet. But I think the problem one is the language. So sometimes it's really tricky for Colombians get news in another language. So because basically it's in Spanish. So I think it's a lack of, still a lack of, I don't know, of news from other resources, if you want.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.